Hey, how's it going, everybody? So I busted my knee. I fell off a ladder and I tore my ACL, and I'm gonna have to be down for maybe a couple months before I can go back to work. So I want to kind of lean into the storytelling part of what I do when I paint. And every job is a story. Every job is interesting. There's always a character or something I'm learning on the job. Every single job has something to learn from or to tell a story about because it is by its nature very messy and very personality dependent. I think there's a lot of painters out there who are forever entangled in the loop of either some kind of drug addiction or some kind of poor work ethic, and they're not learning from their problems or experiences. And I like to kind of look back on my previous projects and kind of think about, man, that was a crazy project. What about this job was really useful to me? And I kind of want to go over that with this. This is my first official job as glass painting. So this is in a house that the people that I talked to, they were trying to sell. They were like, can you get rid of all the wood? The floors are getting ripped up, so you don't really have to worry too much about it. But they didn't tell me that till later. So it was more like a cover the floor kind of situation because I don't think they knew. So I didn't have a ton of equipment. I still had a Nissan, a car, so I didn't actually have a truck. And I had a decent amount of equipment. I had borrowed equipment. I had a sprayer, but I didn't really have the experience. And I quoted them kind of high, so I definitely should have quoted them much higher for this job considering what I was getting into. If I were to quote it now, I'd probably quote the same amount because I have better equipment that I could deal with these problems with. But I'll kind of go through them picture by picture to give you an idea of the struggles that I went through in the process. So right off the bat, almost the whole house was wood paneling. This heavy varnish, heavy saturated wood, and basically only half the house had some kind of drywall in it, but like every single surface was some kind of panel or paneling. And I was still tinkering with gear I no longer use. There's like that lantern in the corner there. Yeah, I don't use that anymore. I have different lights, better lights. So yeah, no, I was like, yeah, I can do it. It'll take me a week. Right? I estimated a week or a week and a half, I think it was. In the end, it took a little longer than I expected, but you'll find out why in a minute here. So I started the masking process. I just started trying to cover everything I didn't want to hit and sanding the wall. So honestly, without going down to bare wood, this is a mistake because what ends up happening is you're just spreading the oils over the whole surface. And I started spraying. I was like, okay, I was given advice from my friend, do it in light coats, do it in multiple light coats, right? And he didn't know how bad these panels were, so under normal circumstances, you might get away with doing water-based paint on panels, but in this case, as you can see, it didn't work. I just went from coat, 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 coat. I think that's another coat. I started looking at reassessing the situation, going, I don't know, man. This is tan, and it's not untanning. I was using this stuff right here, gripper, and it says outstanding stain and tannin blocking. Wrong. It is absolutely not good at blocking tannins. Like, if you want to put 15 coats of paint on your wall, by all means, tannin block away. I struggled with that for probably 4 days. Just sitting and just painting and spraying and painting and spraying. And I already had everything masked off, so it had to have been 4 days. And I wasn't getting a super great coat either. But I was back rolling this too. I was spraying it and rolling it to get it to really get in the grooves and everything. And nothing I threw at it worked. Eventually, I did hit a critical point where it did start to get kind of white. It was still a little tan, but this hallway in this room were still just a little bit tan at the end. They were mostly white, but it did take like 6 coats or 7 coats just over and over and over again, right? So I refused to let that be the normal way to do it and got ahead of it and looked around, and I found oil-based cover stain. And that I did on the inside, and this is near the end of the project that I started doing this, but basically there is like this wooden like enclosed porch basically, but it's sort of inside. It's kind of hard to describe. Here's the pictures of it. This is worse than the inside. It's got more a deeper groove set, but this is the cover stain. This is when I started using the cover stain, the oil-based stuff. And because it had a lot of grooves, it did take like 2 coats of oil. But once that oil was down and dried, I was able to spray it and get a really good coat. And it ended up actually white in that situation. So definitely go for an oil-based sprayer if you can. I know it's kind of a burden to buy two sprayers, but as early as possible. I recently started using an oil-based sprayer on the last job that I was on, and spraying cabinets like heavy tannins and cabinets like this. Spraying heavy tannins is real tough to get perfect. You still got to back roll it, but once you get it down, it's smooth sailing from there. The rest of the project was weird because this whole house was covered. It was like in a pit basically. The walls were heavily waterlogged, so I had a moisture problem through most of the house. There were a couple rooms that were the exception, but this one was the worst. It kept bleeding. Like the paint would run down no matter what I did. I honestly needed a dehumidifier and a heater, or one or the other. And in this situation, I didn't have either, so just had to, spray and pray for the most part. It was it was blue and pink respectively in each room. The pink room was fine, but the blue room was a nightmare. And I don't know why I decided to do a light coat starting off. I found out over several jobs that doing it light like that is not a great strategy. Usually you want to get a solid coat, spraying in the standard method of getting it, fully covered on your first coat. And using the right paint helps in that situation. But I had my masking technique down from the Highland Park house, but anyways, this place had dirt on every wall. I cleaned every wall, but it wasn't enough, so a lot of it kind of bled into the paint surface and made it kind of weird and bumpy. So I had to cover the floors where there was wood or linoleum, because they weren't replacing that. But for the most part, yeah, like you can see that fan right there is really coated in dust. Like it must have been like a smoker, and then they had like a teenager or something who also smoked. Like it was something else. It was kind of a sight to behold. This place was disgusting. Empty. It was disgusting. But I spent probably upwards of 2 weeks, 3 weeks on this project. I think it was 2.5 weeks. It was in the winter, so it's kind of tough to do that. It's at the end of the year, and so the weather wasn't playing nice with the heat. I had to overheat the space to get it to actually dry properly. And this is the back porch. But I started finding like serious problems with the actual drywall. The actual like foundations of the walls were crumbling or falling apart in a lot of cases. Like in the bathroom, it was completely waterlogged. Like no paint would stick to it because it was just so bad. So I just decided to start globbing pink spackle on it and just praying it would dry in place. I don't think it ever truly dried at the end of the project, but this was a weird house because you had the main part of the house, and then you had like a mother-in-law suite, and the mother-in-law suite had no lights, and the floors all had to be covered because they weren't replacing any of that. And it was self-contained. Like it was completely isolated from the rest of the house. I started doing repairs on things. I made more promises than I could keep. So I was putting boards up on where it was crumbling on top of this fireplace here, and trying to get it into a somewhat respectable position. I don't think the smells ever truly went away, and the paint job was kind of mid. It wasn't really the best paint job. It definitely got the place sold, but as they say, don't do what you're not paid to do. That's the really important thing. They paid me to do a specific thing, and I did it, and I didn't go beyond that. Nowadays, I'm going way too far with that. I'm taking it to a higher quality than is promised and not charging appropriately. So I'm ripping myself off in that process. And the people who commissioned this job for me, they basically they wanted to pay me more than I was asking, despite me having trouble with different parts of the house. So the main thing is that the floors were not being covered properly. I had no idea how to prevent overspray at the time, 100% degree. And the mother-in-law suite had overspray on everything. Every single floor was bad. And so in a way to kind of compensate for that problem, I promised them that I would refinish the floors and charge them accordingly for that work. And these floors turned out okay. You know, it was way more work than I could possibly have imagined. This is not the last floor that I did, but I can say that the polyurethane, the tinted polyurethane that they have out there is really, really terrible stuff. It's like really hard to use because it's sticky, and the normal way to do it is to roll it or to spread it around with a sheepskin wipe. I had to buy a T-bar with like a foam tip on it, and that worked pretty good, but the finish wasn't perfect. I got it into a respectable state. This whole place needed a lot of work at the end, but somehow they managed to sell the thing. You can see on the floor here. This is the mother-in-law suite. How much overspray was actually on the floor at the end. I was using goof off, and I was like using different techniques, and I was buying different gear, and I was losing money in the amount of gear than I was getting paid. So I didn't break even, but I definitely got a positive from this job. But it was a hard fought positive. Yeah, like a lot of the walls were like this, no matter how clean sometimes you make it, it's better to fake it than try and make it perfect. Nowadays, I would put oil-based paint on it and raise the stipple using a roller, and that would hide any imperfections in any kind of stipple pattern or bumps that are on there. And I managed to make the place sellable in the end, but I also oversprayed on this like window here, and that had to be completely replaced, like head chop off, because this is a plexiglass window, and I used goof off on it, and it melted it, and it completely made it opaque, like you couldn't see through it. But I was there for days scrubbing that floor. Like I could have saved myself a week if I just spent an extra day properly prepping around the edges. But when it came to finally, close the doors and get everything packed up and, finally good to go at the end of this, because I did ruin this linoleum floor too. Like this was the goof off that I was using was like melting it basically because it's linoleum. But I was wearing my old pair of glasses, and a bit of that goof off, it hit me in the glasses, and that those my spray glasses, I still have them. It still has a dot on the plastic, like where it's just melted, like like I completely ruined it. But yeah, the floors here, let me show you these floors. So I started preparing the floors. The worst part about preparing these floors is the sanding. The sanding took an eternity, and I was using a wireless sander. Like I should have been using something more heavy duty than that. But there's the sheepskin wipe that I started with, and the polyurethane, the Varathane polystain. It's like tinted, right? Not too bad. Not too bad. It has pretty decent self-leveling properties to it. You don't have to sand between coats. You put on one coat and it's done. And there was people previewing the property while I was preparing and putting down the polyurethane. So it was this door. Yeah, so it was fun. So this door, they wanted me to fix this bathroom door too, because it kept hitting the floor and it wasn't the right shape, and I had to rent it. So there's a Home Depot down the street, and I was rolling with a car, right? And I was like, I can't get a door from Home Depot and like bring it to the place. So I rented a truck, like a flatbed truck from Home Depot, shipped it out, returned the truck, came back with my car, installed this door, and realized I don't have any of the tools, none of the tools to carve out the proper stuff for this. I took my belt sander and shaved off the top of it. Like, never in my life have I ever done a door, apparently, like a new door. It is still a skill that I probably will never have. I will pay someone to do this door that actually knows what they're doing instead of doing it for myself at home. Like, I never. Like, it is not fun. I'm sure people who do it for a living are like, yeah, it's easy, no problem, right? But the big problem I was having with this polyurethane floors, I kept walking on the surface. I kept running out of space to T-bar myself out and getting it on my finish. Like, I kept ruining my finish on the walls. I don't know what happened in this picture. Oh, I was standing outside the window so I could take a picture of it. But this place is bad. It was there was vermin inside of it. It had, it was heavily waterlogged. It was dirty. And the wild part about it is I was like finishing up, and I left the place. He paid me the final check, and I came back to check on it to like give kind of that like final sweep to check to make sure the floors were good. I did my checks, And the guy called me back after he paid me, and I think I was at a Home Depot, and he texted me and he said, "Hey, what's this table doing out on the side of the road?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And the like driveway kind of goes off a little bit. It's in a very big plot, and I'm like, "What do you mean the table's on the side of the road? Like, what are you saying? Are you saying I did it?" Like, he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, he's like, "You left the door open." I'm like, I did. First of all, I didn't leave any door open, and second of all, why the fuck would I do that? Like, why would I take the table from the dining room and haul it halfway out, down that long ass driveway to the side of the road? That doesn't make any sense. Like, you gotta, tamp down on your security, your place. Like, people are coming in and out, and you don't even know when they're there. Like, people were telling me that you were, they were supposed to be there, and that you were gonna be there, and you didn't show up, and or had not even heard. Like, so there were other real estate people that were like had access to it, and they weren't talking to the guy. So the wild thing is that kind of ended there. That was the last time I talked to him. From the last time I checked, the property sold. They sold it for like 300K or 250 or something like that. It was a piece of turd that someone bought for 200 plus $1,000. Like, unbelievable, right? So, and this is in a pretty, I don't know, mid tier town. It's not super high end, but the house was a piece of shit. So I'm surprised it went for that. But I later on, this is like over a year later, I think it was a year and a half later, I had another job in the same town, and I was doing an apartment. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna pass by this house and see, just take a glance at it, see where it's at. On a whim, I see this, and I glanced at it. I'm like, it doesn't seem like much. Then I stopped on the way back the same day, like the next day, to look at it. I'm like, because that kind of looked weird. I'm like, what's up with that? And it's burned out. I'm like, what the fuck? Are you effing kidding me? This place is burned out? Like, this is where the floor was being, like finished, and like this is the front door, and this is the mother-in-law suite over here. And I'm like, holy shit. That's bananas. I can't believe that happened. Like, they just bought this place and now it's on fire. I mean, it kind of makes sense considering it was, very heavily waterlogged, but it's unbelievable. Like, the first place that I officially worked on, like, burned the fuck down. Like, that kind of blows my mind a little bit. But yeah, that's not the end of the story though. The other part about it is I came back the next day just passing by it, and as you can see, this is in my truck, so this is this is long enough time later, but I passed by it and it is gone, like completely plowed down, like a fucking crater in in the earth, like somebody had an insurance claim on this place and cashed out because holy crap, this house just vanished overnight, and it just blows my mind how quickly they can do that. So yeah, that's the interesting story of my first job as a what you might call a professional painter, and also floor refinisher, also door repairman, also drywall repairman, also yeah, I'm just gonna stop there because it's getting a little out of hand. But yeah, so you never know what's gonna happen in life, and it's an interesting story that I think there's a whole bunch of things that I learned from it. From using oil-based paint to covering the floors properly to not saying yes to everything a client asks you to do. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say I can't do that. I'm not. That's not my wheelhouse. I'm a painter, not a floor finisher. So choose your battles. Happy painting. See you in the next video.